the thing I loved about Trevor out of this year is that he looked like college football wasn't good enough for him because he never threw the ball away. He always extended plays. He always tried to make the tough throw. It's as if he was bored because he was so good. He knew that he was the best player on the field.
Everyone, welcome back to Friends in the Corner podcast, stories and topics from around Kentucky. I'm your host, Dan Pauly, and we're coming up here in the spring, finishing off the tail end of this month, 2021. Where have you gone? Don't go too soon. We can't go back to 2020 after all. But we have something special here to talk about today. We're going to be previewing the NFL draft, and we had to bring someone back, someone a little special. He hasn't been gone too long from the podcast here, but we're excited to bring him back on again, Mr. Angelo Carriero. How you doing, Angelo?
Dan, I'm doing well. As much as I love wrestling and WrestleMania, the NFL draft is my true passion. So to come in here to talk about the NFL draft, talk about something I love and that I like to be very critical of, and it's a really good test to test how I view players, how good am I at quote unquote scouting, as they say. So it's always the most fun time of the year for me, and it changes NFL teams' futures and franchises forever. So who knows? Maybe the Browns pick the next Lawrence Taylor with their 26? Is that what the Browns have?
Yep.
26 pick. That maybe you pick the next Lawrence Taylor or you pick the next Brady Quinn. Who knows?
There's a strong threreshold there. So, but yeah, we just had you recently on for a WrestleMania episode, which was a lot of fun. We've had you on to talk about UK football. And then this time last year, we actually had you on to talk about the NFL draft. And as we referred to you multiple times on this show, you are the Mel Kiper of Lexington. So we do have to come to you for this knowledge of the NFL draft, because you've been doing this now for a very long time, haven't you?
I wrote my first NFL draft guide when I was 12 years old in 2005. I actually have the copy in my room when I was writing about the draft and following this. I've seen plenty of players. That draft, for anybody that doesn't remember, was the Aaron Rodgers, Alex Smith draft. That was the last time 3 running backs went in the top 5 of the NFL draft. It really was kind of the breaking point for the running back boom before it kind of slid down. So it was fun. It's a very humbling process. Green Bay Packers fan, as you know, and when I first did my first draft, the first page, 2005 NFL mock draft, my name, it says San Francisco 49ers select Aaron Rodgers, and in the comment, it's 49ers take the second best quarterback in the draft, because I, at 12 years old, was convinced by people that Alex Smith was the best quarterback. So then he goes to my favorite team and becomes one of the 10 best quarterbacks to ever play the game of football. So off the bat, it was a humbling experience. So the NFL draft, that's why I love it so much too. It always a way of checking you. You can't think you're always right, because you will be wrong. And it has just such a process of humbling you. And that's part of why I love it so much.
But we're going to be talking about the 2021 draft class, and we're going to be talking a lot about some of these prospective players, especially we'll talk about some of the guys that are coming out of Kentucky, since we are a Kentucky centric show. But, we know that you at ESPN Radio, Angelo, do cover the Bengals. And last year it was a pretty big draft to talk about, because that's when Joe Burrow was picked number 1 overall. And so before we talk about the 2021 draft class, let's kind of cap up here the 2020 draft class with Joe Burrow. So what did you think of Joe Burrow during his first year before he got hurt? What did you see out of him in Cincinnati? And do you still feel like you have that same standard that you mentioned about Joe Burrow when he was on during draft night that you do now?
So, like you remember from last year, and I had Joe Burrow as the number 1 player in the 2020 NFL draft. He is one of the best quarterbacks that I've in the terms of game tape. Everybody knows who Joe Burrow is with the Heisman Trophy win, 61 touchdown passes in a year, which, by the way, is important because two of his receivers from that team that caught double-digit touchdowns in Jamar Chase and Terrence Marshall Jr. are likely to be first-round picks in this upcoming draft. Joe Burrow is, and honestly, that's fun because to compare to Trevor Lawrence, there's part of me that would put Joe Burrow over Trevor Lawrence as the second best prospect since Andrew Luck as a quarterback prospect that I have watched. I will say that I more of a realist, and I don't want to say other people that scout or cover the Bengals. I think a lot of people, especially people on Twitter, there is a tendency because the bases are so volatile. Like, we really need you to be for our team us. So a lot of it is praising, where I thought Joe had his moments. In fact, I thought he had his entire games that he was very good. But to say that Joe Burrow was everything that he was built up to and more, I would have to disagree. I thought there were a lot of times that Joe looked like 2018 LSU Joe Burrow than 2019 LSU Joe Burrow. The fact of the matter is that the offensive line was obviously an issue for the Bengals, which I'm sure we will get to later on with their 5th overall pick. But I think the overall thing that I can take away from that season before the injury was that it looked like he belonged. Important for quarterbacks, especially highly picked quarterbacks, because you've got your Justin Herberts, who I think kind of had the season that we all expected Joe Burrow. And then you have your Tagovailoas, where people were asking if they were going to trade for Deshaun Watson or if they would take a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick before they traded out of it. So are certain levels of, is this guy going to make it? I really thought it showed that he could. Obvious Cleveland Browns games where he performed well. He was playing well in the Washington game, the Philly game. I thought that the offense, because early on in the season, now later on in the year, the Bengals got better at running the ball. They couldn't really run the ball when Joe was center. And I believe that they manufactured a running game, quote unquote, through their passing. If you look at Joe Burrow's numbers, his average yards per pass was under 7 yards. Average yards per pass was under 6 yards. So that is to essentially say that it was very much a dink and dunk offense, which I believe if you watched every Bengals game like I did under Joe Burrow, that's also the tape didn't lie as well. So overall, I think that there were positives. I thought that he wasn't necessarily at primary his first year, which I think would have been fair for Joe Burrow. But overall, it sucks because I want to say that coming into this year, he had that chance to catapult to the top 15, top 12, maybe even top 10, depending on the draft, quarterbacks in the NFL. I know that the injury or his knee rehab is going well, but injury was just the nightmare that Bengals fans had.
Mm-hmm. It's like, just like what happened to our last 2 quarterbacks.
Exactly.
Well, we did. It's going to be interesting to see Joe Burrow bouncing back from this injury and what the Bengals can put around him to kind of keep him healthy in a division that's becoming pretty strong in some levels, kind of changing around in others. My Cleveland Browns are looking pretty good, just adding a little more firepower with Mr. Jadeveon Clowney there. So I'm very excited about the
great signing.
I'm very excited about the future of the AFC North as a Browns fan right now.
As a Bengals fan, as a Ravens fan, and as a Browns fan, it's just a good time to, if you do not like the Steelers, which I would say that I'm not entirely partial to the team, except for Benny Snell, that I think a lot of people are excited to see the way the division is shaping out, especially after they restructured Ben Roethlisberger's contract. It's, if you're a Browns fan, you got to think that you're one of the top 6 in the league heading into next year. Hopefully that pressure doesn't crack your team, but It's
Right.
still the Browns. I still have a vendetta against the Browns. He traded your back. For people that don't remember, Dan Pauly traded his Cincinnati Bengals when he was a fan to join the Cleveland Browns. He is a traitor against you. He is wearing a different orange than he used to. Shoot him on Twitter at FI Podcast.
I have no regrets, but nonetheless, we've talked a little bit about Burrow here, but what about from the rest of that class? Is there any rookies that stood out to you this season in particular? Any other ones besides Burrow?
I think obviously the first place that you would start would be Justin, because
Absolutely.
Justin Herbert was a guy that I watched a lot last year. I liked Justin Herbert as a first-round quarterback, but me and a friend of mine that watch the videos, the scouting videos together. Usually I just pull up like some type of verses where I just do every play with the broadcast commentary over it so I can have my own opinion. I don't like to be informed by others. I like to create my own opinion and just kind of ride and die on that. I liked Justin Herbert enough, but I saw kind of the flaws. He was towards the end of my first-round prospects. I had about 16, 17 guys last year, or no doubt if you have a first-round pick, don't trade it for these guys. I did not expect him to look like Patrick Mahomes. And for anybody that thinks that's too lofty, well, then you didn't watch Justin Herbert, because he was making throws last year in prime games, out of primetime games, in big matchups, in small matchups. The guy looked like a superstar. And I really think that was out of left field. If Herbert was to ever become that guy, I think it would take a couple of years to do it. He came out last year and proved why. A lot of people don't remember this, but 2 years before his draft, people thought he would come out to be the number one overall pick. And then he came out and he's the third quarterback. I'll bet the sixth overall pick in his draft. So it's not like he slid Aaron Rodgers did, but he was still the third quarterback taken. And he easily looked the best out of quarterbacks, out of any rookie last year. Some other guys that I thought performed well, you look at the offensive tackle class. I know that Andrew Thomas struggled for the Giants, but Jake Wills for the Cleveland Browns, former Lafayette High School product. Mekhi Becton of the Jets, who I'll admit year in I was very wrong on. I thought he was a raw developmental prospect at best. He came in and performed very well early on in the season and Tristan Wirfs, who I had as my number one offensive lineman in the draft. I kind of liked him more at guard, but he still went out at right tackle and was the best offensive lineman on a Super Bowl champion team. So I don't really pay attention to the offensive line around these times. They're very important picks when you get prospects like that, and they performed amazingly. Justin Jefferson had a rookie of the year level. He was a second team All-Pro, actually. How many catches did he have again? He had, sorry about that, 8 catches for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns for a rookie. That's unbelievable. I thought CeeDee Lamb was awesome last year. He had the catch of the year against the Minnesota Vikings. There's Jeremy Chin, Jonathan Taylor. Trying to look at some more. Chase Claypool obviously did some good things.
Yeah.
Brandon I was impressed with. T. Higgins of the Bengals. He was a lot better than I thought he would be. And I would say so of all the guys that I thought really had an impact on the season, not just for rookies, I would say that was kind of the class of showed the best. Yeah. Oh, and Chase Young, even though in limited time, I think he was as great as like down-to-down player because he's in and out of the lineup. But I think he proved why he's the next defensive superstar.
Absolutely. And he's a Buckeye, so you can't forget about that.
Boo.
Well,
even though I like some Buckeyes in the next.
I was going to say, I know at least one we're probably going to be talking about here soon. Well, we might be talking about another Buckeye here in the next minute because we're going to be talking about the 2021 NFL draft coming up here. And the very first pick in this draft is going to go to the Jacksonville Jaguars and their new head coach, Urban Meyer from The Ohio State University. He did leave, but, it is what it is. But
that's all he does is leave.
He does. Win a championship, leave. So,
Jackson, he's too good to get fired. That's for sure.
Yeah. Win a championship, get in controversy, leave. That's what. So you have a lot to look up to here, Jacksonville. But yeah, so the Jacksonville Jaguars have the number 1 overall pick, and I think this is the first time in franchise history they've had the number 1 overall pick, isn't it? They like danced around
I
it,
think
but I don't think they've had
I
it,
believe you're correct. No, I believe you're correct. Yes.
which is
I didn't think
shocking.
about that. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Which is shocking for how not good they've been for a while.
Well, it's funny. As Jacksonville, if you look at history, didn't they make 2 or 3 AFC championship games in the last, what were they formed in 1996? They made, I believe, AFC championship games in the 90s. They were with David Garrard, even Blake Bortles got him to an AFC championship game. Jacksonville, for when they're bad, they're really bad, but they're sneaky good sometimes. I think we forget about that. But yes, this is the first time. I don't know if they've even had a number. They did have the number 2 overall pick one time. That was in 2013 when they picked Luke Joeckel of Texas A&M, which I'll talk about him actually a little bit later when we talk about some of the prospects in the draft. But no, good eye on that. Jacksonville definitely. Can we say before we move on with Jacksonville, what a terrible, terrible, terrible job by the New York Jets it was to win those last 2 games, to let Adam Gase win them those games, to let Sam Darnold win them those games. You could have had Trevor Lawrence. You were in the driver's seat for Trevor, and you decided that you wanted to win 2 games at the end of the year. That was if I was a Jets fan, that's unforgivable.
I feel like there's a lot of things that are unforgivable that Jets fans go through.
I will say I do like the quarterbacks outside of Trevor. There are 2 quarterbacks I like outside of Trevor Lawrence in this class. So at least they're not completely shot in the foot, but you had a chance to get the generational guy. And I know we'll talk about Trevor in a second, so go ahead. But I mean, come on, Jets.
So they got the number 1 overall pick, and it is assumed that it's probably going to be Trevor Lawrence. So what's your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence here going to the Jacksonville Jaguars and joining Urban Meyer? And what do you think? Do you think this dynamic is going to work with Lawrence and Urban?
Number 1, that was generous to say the presumed number 1 overall pick. If there was a betting booth that would take my money, I would put my very small but my life savings into Trevor Lawrence being the number 1 overall pick of the draft. Like put every bit of asset that you have on that, because it's gonna hit. But Trevor Lawrence, I'm not gonna say Trevor Lawrence is a perfect prospect, because he's not. He is not perfect. If you're talking about their positions, he might not even be the best player at his. Like, he's the best quarterback in this draft, but I mean, I think Kyle Pitts is a better receiver than Trevor Lawrence is a quarterback. It just so happens that Trevor Lawrence plays the most important position in all of sports. Mm-hmm. But Dan, make no mistake about it. If he's he's might be a 9 passer out of 10, or even an 8 passer out of 10, but he's like 10 mobility, 10 intangibles, 10 confidence, 10 for your business. If you pick Trevor Lawrence, if Jacksonville picks Trevor Lawrence, they will be one of the top 5 most televised and viewed franchises in the league over the next decade. And if they want Jacksonville to make that jump to London and move and become the first European team, Trevor Lawrence is the ticket to near doubling the value of that franchise. That's how important Trevor Lawrence is, and why the Jets screwed up so much and Jacksonville's sitting so in this situation. His 2020 tape, he misses some throws. You have to kind of go back to see more of his special games than he had in 2020. But number 1, remember, it was a COVID year. And number 2, the thing I loved about Trevor out of this year is that he looked like college football wasn't good enough for him, because he never threw the ball away. He always extended plays. He always tried to make the tough throw. It's as if he was bored, because he was so good. He knew that he was the best player on the field. And I remember at the end of the Ohio State game, where Ohio State had beaten Trevor Lawrence to end Trevor Lawrence's college career, there was a defensive back that said, "Hey, man," he came up in Ohio State, and it's this guy, and he's just looking at someone his own age and just peering into his eyes and being like, "You're special, man. You're special." And Trevor's like, "Oh, thanks." Like, I just think that Trevor Lawrence is built for this. He is the definition of a franchise quarterback. So it's not like his tape's It's not like he's a perfect prospect. I think Andrew Luck was a better passer. Joe Burrow is a better passer coming out of college, I'll bet a couple years old, than Trevor, but he is the right pick. He is the perfect pick. And to your other question about Urban Meyer and how he fits in that system, Urban Meyer really likes to get the ball out in the playmaker's hands, which is a little funny because Lawrence is the type of quarterback you draft to win you games. But Trevor Lawrence 2020 Clemson tape, it's a lot of swing screens and screen passes and short dump offs, CTN and Amari Rogers and these ultra talented Clemson Tigers. Trust me, if it's like the 2020 Clemson offense, which Urban Meyer's offenses tend to look like, he'll fit right in.
With the parks they have there in Jacksonville now, it's kind of I don't know what the right way to say it, but there's not a whole lot of resources there for Lawrence that I see. So how do you think that's going to impact him?
Let me say this about what he has around him. DJ Chark, to me, is a very talented receiver. I think that kid can be one of the top 20 receivers in the league someday. He's 6'4". He's really fast. He's good at jump balls. He's really good in the red zone. There's a lot of, ironically, Allen Robinson, the guy he replaced, in him in the terms of what he does well. Robinson did well. Laviska was a second-round pick of theirs last year, a guy out of Colorado that I so desperately wanted the Green Bay Packers to pick an event, and it cost us a chance at the Super Bowl. Neither here nor there. They found James Robinson as a thunder running back, a guy that could just take 20 type of guy. They have Cole. They have a couple other receivers, but this draft they definitely have the chance to add up to their offense. They still have a lot of high picks. They have the 25th pick in the draft from their Los Angeles Rams for Jalen Ramsey. They have their top second-round pick. I think it's a perfect situation that, given the opportunity and what talent's available on the board at 25, to take his backfield teammate Travis in, and you get the lightning to James Robinson's thunder. You put him in that Urban Meyer system. You have Chark, you have Chenault, a guy like Elijah Moore at the top of the second round. And then just like that, their offense becomes the top half of the league just because of the talent influx. So while I agree the current iteration of the Jaguars is a little bit lackluster offensively, a couple of draft picks and right allocation of those draft picks around Trevor Lawrence, I think they could be right up there to above league average in the first year.
See, you've already got it set up, so we got to get this into the hands of Jaguars front office so that they can get
I'll their GM, Dan. I can take that responsibility very begrudgingly.
I think Tony Khan's their GM, but
oh yeah, because if I became their GM, I would also get on AEW. Yeah. I would want to be in a feud with Jericho while I'm like, eat me with Jericho, or I'm drafting Mac Jones, number one. And then obviously it would be like, oh, please go be the GM of, or go have the feud with Chris Biscuit as Trevor Lawrence. So that's how I would use that.
As we just enlightened too, for those that don't know, the owners of the Jacksonville Jaguars also own AEW, All Elite Wrestling. So do you think there's a chance we see Trevor Lawrence appear on Dynamite on Wednesday nights?
Oh, not only is there a chance to appear, when he becomes a superstar, like I know he's going to become, he's going to have a program, like right as the Super Bowl's coming, so going to be on AEW fighting like MJF or something. It's going to be hilarious. I'm really excited about the crossover. Urban Meyer was on AEW the other.
Oh, was he? I didn't see him. Shoot.
Yeah, he had a backstage. They was talking to none other than Mike Tyson. So it was Mike Tyson and Urban Meyer backstage.
Oh, that's amazing. I got to go back and rewatch that.
Yep.
I haven't caught up on my wrestling since WrestleMania because other things have been going on. So now I need
to get a life, unlike me.
No, I don't have money, but I got, but nonetheless, that's going to be funny to see. I was just thinking, because surely Cody Rhodes has got to get a picture of Trevor Lawrence for the Instagram. So,
right.
But yeah, so we're expecting it's going to happen that Trevor Lawrence is going to be the first pick to the Jacksonville Jaguars here. But as you were saying, there are some other QBs that you're high on in this draft too. And that's kind of been the discussion. I was like, well, after Trevor Lawrence goes, who's next? Who does the Jets, get after him. Maybe the 49ers who have the third pick now, who are they looking at a quarterback? And there's a couple guys here that are kind of falling for that number 2 spot at the moment. Houston Fields, Trey Lance, and Zach Wilson, Mac Jones, maybe to a lesser degree. So what's your thoughts on some of these guys in this quarterback carousel we've got?
I think there are 2 other quarterbacks in this class that if I had a top 5 pick, or if Trevor Lawrence, that could be, I would consider for Jacksonville with the number 1 overall pick. That is Zach Wilson of BYU and Justin Fields of Ohio State. Zach Wilson, excuse me. See, I mixed them up already. They're so interchangeable at those spots. I think they're both so good in their own ways. I think Zach Wilson is the guy that it's hard. It's hard. It's the difference between if I ran an NFL team and if I was picking for an NFL team. And I know that sounds silly, but there are different ways to look at this. For an example, from the tape that I've seen, the improvements that he's made in his physical skill set along with his moxie, I think Zach Wilson is the second best quarterback in this draft. He has a very live arm. The way that it's effortless, the way that he throws down the field. And I was watching BYU tape just a couple nights ago, and I was like, man, but I want to see him bullet a pass. I haven't seen him bullet a pass. He's not zipping them. I know he can fling it deep. And there was this one play towards the end of the Houston game where they were behind, and BYU had a great year last year, by the way. Zach will rifle this pass across the middle on this slant, and that's all I needed to see. The guy he just has an absolute whip of an arm. I'm very impressed by him. Watched his game against Tennessee in 2019. He heard footsteps. Every drop back, he would start running because he was scared of the pass. You look at 2020, it is a completely different guy. He will stare down the barrel of the gun and take the hit as he releases a 45-down pass. He's mobile enough. I'm not saying he's a running quarterback, but he's mobile enough or escape in the pocket. There's a reason why into that second overall pick with the New York, rightfully so. I think that he has all the makings of a 10 to 15 year quarterback though. Justin Fields is the other guy because I'm a big pedigree guy, and I try not to be to a fault, but I think there is a certain level of there are guys that have been watching this kid much longer than I have in high school, going into college, and it's every major program or every major high school analyst thought he was great. Every major college program thought he was great, that they wanted him out of college. And then he only went to Ohio State, 2 of the top 5 college football programs in the nation. And he was 50 touchdowns to 1 interception, in his Heisman finalist year, not last year, but the year before with Chase Young and Burrow guys. He's so sturdy. He's big. I like his mechanics. I know that there's a lot of things about his off the field, which I'll talk about in a second, but he's accurate. I love his pocket presence, the way he maneuvers in the pocket. I really appreciate, even though I think that's kind of at times an overall. I don't think it has to look good to be good. And I think he showed in that Clemson game where his arm strength, the way that he can throw it around the field, I just feel too inconsistent throwing the ball, and why I would put Zach Wilson up. But for a team like the 49ers that trade essentially 3 first-round picks to move up to number 3, I want to make sure the guy that fits that franchise quarterback type of mold. And I think Justin Fields has that. Now, there are reports, and it's not a character like off the field, like he's not a criminal. It's simply that people think around the NFL that Justin Fields may be kind of a me first type of attitude, from what Dan Orlovsky has said, or I believe it was maybe Connor or Albert Breer, maybe one of the Sports Illustrated guys, but there is real, Daniel Jeremiah is one of them. There is real concern that Justin Fields maybe wants to be a superstar, I guess, more than a quarterback, which when you're that talented and you for that long, I understand. But to me, I don't know. You can say there are guys like that. Like Cam Newton comes to mind. He's been like a very often comparison to Justin Fields, where he quote unquote a me first guy and flashy. All he did was win the MVP and take his team to the Super Bowl. And it seems like players around the league really, and they're just, I don't know what to say about it. I'm just people reporting this from NFL offices. Obviously, it's a concern for them. But when it comes to just watching Justin Fields on field, he's a guy that if I was a team picking in the top 5, along with Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence, I would feel comfortable investing not only that pick, but if I was a GM, my job into Justin Fields, as well as Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence.
When you talked about kind of the off the field stuff, I guess something that kind of hit me, I know you mentioned Cam Newton, but another Ohio State guy like Dwayne Haskins, who let those issues prevent him from becoming who he was supposed to be. And now talent wise, Justin Fields and Dwayne Haskins, I feel like are different though.
I thought Dwayne Haskins was awful. I was not a Dwayne Haskins. I did not understand why he was a first round pick, why he was a first round prospect. And Dwayne Haskins' things off the field, it seemed more like the structure around him was leading him, where just was almost like to me first. It seemed like from that his dad had like a really strong hold on Dwayne Haskins's like dealing and whatnot. And I think that can get for a young man that needs to grow into himself. That's the thing. I don't think Justin Fields is going to have any trouble growing to an individual and a person, just from everything that we've seen. Yeah, I don't think he has any off the field concerns. It's just the things that were said about, he didn't really want to make friends. He wanted to come in, win the starting quarterback job. He was pretty much just a job process for him. Mm-hmm. And I know that football teams and, you don't like that. We want guys that are committed to the team. College for everyone is just a route to get a job, right? Like right. College is literally designed for. So Justin Fields came in, hey, I didn't get the starting job at Georgia. I want to be a starting NFL quarterback. I'm coming here to win the NFL or the starting job here. He won it. He lost 2 games in 2 years and was very good in almost every single game he played in. I have no doubts about him. I have no doubts about Zach Wilson. I have no doubts about Trevor Lawrence. Those 3 guys, take them top 5, book it.
Now, a name you did leave out there, and we can start talking about him, probably the number 4 guy, is Trey Lance out of North Dakota. Why aren't you as high on him? Is it because he's from a smaller program?
No, I actually had Carson Wentz ranked number 5 overall in his draft coming out of North Dakota State. So it's not a program thing for me, as evident by prior rankings of a quarterback that came out of North Dakota State. The reason why I'm lower on Trey Lance is kind of the reason why I was lower on Jordan Love later. I think Trey Lance is a little more athletic than Jordan Love, but overall, I think what they're getting to the NFL are similar skill sets, very similar just packages in general when you draft. Trey Lance has a very live arm. There's a lot of zip on it. There is power to his throws, his deep ball. He can hit the deep ball, no problem for him. In the terms of arm strength, he has mobility. I like the confidence. He's not scared. Like, obviously North Dakota State really like to run him. I think when it comes to Lance, obviously hasn't had a lot of, he was a redshirt freshman, then COVID hit. Now he's into the NFL draft. He's a guy that I think his accuracy is just very hit and miss. Now that could be mechanical. That could just be reps. And if a team chose to sit him, I think that through development, maybe like Jordan Love with the Packers, like he had his spot like Atlanta, where he could sit behind Matt Ryan and develop. I think there is a future Trey Lance can be a very talented and very good quarterback. If you're drafting him right away and expecting that, you're not going to get that. I think that's the reason why I have him lower, is that of a gamble. If this is the finished product of Trey, not going to be very good. He is going to struggle in the NFL. But I do feel his deep ball is inconsistent. Like one time you'll see him throw a deep ball and it looks just beautiful. And you say, oh, that's the best quarterback in the draft. And then he'll have 3 more that just are overthrows. And you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess it's not natural to him. When it comes to Trey Lance, obviously his physical package is impressive. He's not as good of a runner as people make him out to be, okay? Like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are just as good as runners as Trey Lance is. People act like Trey Lance is some special runner. He's not. In fact, everybody talked about how Trey Lance, and I think it was specifically Daniel Jeremiah, that he was the best running quarterback. That's like a plus. He ran a 4.6. Justin Fields ran a 4.44. You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't even the fastest quarterback in his class. He wasn't even the fastest quarterbacks among the elite quarterbacks. Go ahead, Dan.
So as far as these prospects, and that it sounds like the way you have it set up, correct me if I'm wrong, but you see Lawrence 1, Wilson 2, Fields 3. So where does Lance fall in? Is he top 10, or do you think he falls later in the first round?
I wouldn't take him top 10.
Okay.
I would not feel confident in that. If I was forced to take him, let's just say I had to take Trey Lance, I would want to make sure that it was a situation in which you have a veteran quarterback that you can survive, or a team that has patience, because I think that he needs to get in the system, and even before he goes on the field, just get good enough at the system to where, hey, if your accuracy isn't great, if your mechanics are off, if you're whatever, that you know what to do mentally with the ball, and that can help him out. I think, and this is counterproductive to saying this, I'm just saying that if that was a top 10 pick, but if I were the Bears sitting there at 20,
yeah,
and I needed a quarterback, they have a countless second tier quarterbacks that they're going to be able to pick from, but that's a team that I could say, like, why not take the chance? But then again, that's going to be a situation where he would probably have to play right away. He would probably beat Andy Dalton out, or would start over him pretty early on, because, you know, that's how NFL teams operate. I like Trey Lance's skill set. I'm just not completely sold that he will be good someday. So it would scare me to take Trey Lance. I would say that if there was a quarterback that I kind of like, and I fall into this trap, Dan, so I'm likely going to be wrong about this, but there's a guy named Davis Mills from Stanford that a lot of people in NFL draft circles have really talked up now that we've kind of exhausted the quarterback carousel of those four guys and Mac Jones. He was the number one pro-style quarterback coming out of high school. He is a guy that as that highly ranked that apparently there was on the mock a draft set from one of the drafts, they asked David Shaw, hey, do you have anybody coming up the pipe for us to watch? And he said, yeah, Davis Mills, the quarterback, watch out for him. If you look at his if you looked at the games that I've watched of Davis Mills, mechanically he's very reminiscent. And I'm not saying he's this good. He's not this good. But mechanically he's very reminiscent of Peyton Manning and Andrew Luck. Like, just picture perfect, built in the lab mechanics, which Rashawn Slater in this draft, Luke Jokel, that doesn't always mean you're going to be great because you're so good mechanically, but it just looks right from the kid. He can run a little bit. He's tough. He has pretty good accuracy. He just didn't get a lot of chances to start through injury and through COVID. He didn't have as many reps, as many opportunities. They love to run the ball at Stanford. But there's part of me that would rather have Davis Mills over Trey Lance. But I do have both Davis Mills and Trey Lance over Mac Jones, if that kind of gives you a feeling where I feel about Mac Jones.
So, yeah, we can talk a little bit about Mac Jones, I guess, here. Former University Kentucky commit / decommit. Where are your feelings about Mac Jones? Do you feel like – because some people have him as the number 5 guy. Do you feel like that's overhyped a little bit? Do you feel like he's not someone, or I guess to say, and I'm maybe I don't want to yammer here, but just say, is it just because the Bama effect? I guess they're like, oh, this is Alabama's quarterback, so he should know how to play at a high level.
If I had to rank him up with the rest of the quarterback prospects in this draft, I probably would have him 6th behind Lawrence, Wilson, Fields, Mills, Lance, and then Jones. From the quarterback prospects I've seen. With Mac, I will say this. There is the chance, if you were glass all the way full, if you put your Crimson Tide colored glasses on and said, this is what I think Mac Jones could be, you would have to hope for a less mobile Ben Roethlisberger, or a just maybe Phillip Rivers is his absolute top of the ceiling, which if you love Mac Jones, that must be what you see. Even Phillip Rivers, much more accurate coming out of NC State. And I think that was my biggest problem is early on in the process, I was like, yeah, Mac Jones is the most accurate quarterback in the draft. Like if there was a quarterback you were going to draft out of this class to right away, Mac Jones would be second behind Trevor Lawrence. And after watching the tape, that's wrong. It's actually very wrong. People for Mac Jones didn't start a ton of games. The only reason he even played last year was because of Tua's injury. He had 1 year as a starter. Obviously, Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle came out and said, well, we liked catching passes from Mac Jones more than Tua. Well, no crap. Tua was the 5th overall pick, has millions of dollars in his track. Mac Jones hasn't been drafted yet. They're probably just trying to help get drafted. Maybe some of it's sincere, but obviously there is motivation to say that. Number two, if you Mac Jones, this is no fault to himself, but he is easily the least talented of the skill group on that. It makes Dave the tight end position of that Alabama offense. When you're throwing to Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle and last year Jerry Jeudy and Henry Ruggs and Najee Harris, which I hope you ask me a little about later because I think he's a 10 prospect in this draft, and I think he's a running back on that caliber of like an Ezekiel Elliott coming out, like the Todd Gurley's, the Nets, those types. I think he's special running back talent. Devonta Smith, I have there in the draft period. I think Jalen Waddle is a top 10 pick, like in this draft period. The amount of talent he had, and then you turn on the film and it's like, well, why are you missing passes, bro? Why missing easy passes? Why do you get so easily flustered? And maybe that's to protect the ball. He didn't throw a ton of interceptions, but we both know, we both watch Kentucky. We're both here in Lexington, Kentucky. The throw he made against Kentucky, and it was a play where he was drifting to the back and to the left away from the pocket as he was looking around the play. And he, as he was going backwards, rifled this pass into the back of the end zone, right into Devonta Smith's hands. Only Smith could catch it. That was the most impressive throw that I had seen from Mac Jones after reviewing tape. It was the one that I saw on that, which is still a very good throw. But that's where I kind of thought, oh, maybe Mac is just this expert big brain, like can just put the ball all spots in the field. Pretty much it's like this. You hope he, like, at the best you think he's become Phillip Rivers, which is totally worth the top 5 of any draft. Probably, I think he is probably like a stopgap quarterback, like journeyman, like really good backup. I think that all the reports say he's probably going to go 3rd overall, which is shocking to me. He's more primed for a situation like Chicago or like,
New England.
Some of the other teams. New England, maybe. Yeah, I think there's obviously a need for a starter there, and there's a possibility that could work out. It just depends where they want to go. I think that Mac has a chance where he could play right away, and for a team that needs someone to come in and play right now and some boost. But as a long-term quarterback prospect, I just like him as much as these other guys.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see how all these quarterbacks wind up here. I didn't know a whole lot about Mills because I don't really watch that much Stanford football here, but I'm interested to see what might happen here with him. We also talked a little bit earlier about the Cincinnati Bengals, which you do cover, and we talked a little bit about Joe Burrow. Bengals here do have the number 5 pick. We talked about some of the needs that Cincinnati has, especially with guards to help out Burrow and stuff. So what's your thoughts on this 9th pick that Cincinnati has?
This is a pick that I was pretty sure on. I mean, positive. And I started watching the offensive tackle tape of the class and looking at the guys. I still have Penei Sewell number 1 out of all the offensive tackles. I think there are positives and negatives for all of the tackles. I think Sewell has the least of them. I think if Sewell had the body of a guy like Tristan Wirfs last year, I think he would be the best offensive tackle prospect I've ever seen. But even his body, though, it's just like some of the photos. It's not even it's that bad. It's just he, comparatively, quote unquote, smaller, but you look at him on tape, he's perfect. He has like a squatty lower frame. He's very quick out to the edges, has long enough arms for the shin. He started at Oregon at 17 years old.
No,
his
I didn't
birthday,
know that.
he was 17 years and 11 months old when he started at left tackle at Oregon.
Wow.
And he turned 18 his freshman year, and then he was 18 and 19 year. And when he was 19 years old, he was the first ever sophomore to win the Outland Trophy for best offensive lineman.
Wow.
He won like all of the lineman awards as a sophomore. That's how good Penei Sewell was. And there are parts of me that like, oh, I want to see the Rashawn Slater-esque technique. Oh, I want to see the Christian Darrisaw body. Oh, I want to see the Elijah Vera Tucker level strength out of Penei Sewell. But to be honest, all those guys have their faults. And if you take some of the best attributes from all of them and create them, it's Penei Sewell. I wish that his tape was a little more in terms of physical dominance. But again, he was 19 years old. That is the hardest position in college football to go from high school to college at. Is from high school offensive lineman to college offensive lineman is the single hardest position to make that jump. And he did it at 17 years old, 11 months. And he started. And he won all the awards as a sophomore, as a fresh 19-year-old sophomore. He is 20 years old going into this draft class. Like that, him and Kyle Pitts are the only two 20-year-olds right now in the draft class. And coincidentally, they're the two of the top, picks in the draft. All that is to say that I wish I was more convinced on Sewell being elite prop, but I am convinced enough to think that the Bengals should pick him. If I was running the Bengals, I would say the hardest pick would be between Sewell. Let's say Atlanta goes Kyle Pitts fourth. I'm just saying, like, mock draft quarterbacks go top 3. Let's say Kyle Pitts goes 4. Okay, just as a scenario. I would have not over Jamar Chase, but Devonta Smith. And people are down on Devonta Smith. Oh, he's only 166 pounds. Oh, he's only 6 foot even. That guy's tape is perfect. Mm-hmm. He is phenomenal. Me and my buddy call him the Phantom because like playing against a ghost when he's out there. It's unbelievable what he does. It's not that he just gets open, Dan. It's that he is a jump. Like I saw this one play where he had 2 bigger defensive backs on him and on a contested catch, like going towards the ball. He catches, he gets open. He has acceleration. He has escapability. Every out, he's a perfect receiver. And I didn't think that anybody could be better than Jerry Jeudy in the years that I saw last year because Jerry Judy's route running. Devonta Smith is better as a player. I think the world of him. I have him third on my board behind Trevor and Kyle Pitts. He's third overall. That the conversation I would have. I still have Jamar Chase as a top 10 guy. I still have Jalen Waddle. I actually have Jalen Waddle one spot of Chase because I know everybody loves Chase. Everybody's on Jamar Chase. I think Jamar Chase is the safest pick out of the receivers. I think he's the guy that's going to have at minimum 7 1,000-yard seasons. He's just going to be really good, really solid. But I just don't think he's the best. I think he is actually behind Pitts, Smith, Waddle in my eyes if I was going to rank those 4 guys. But it does seem like the Bulls are probably going to take Jamar Chase 5th from all of the things that I've through interviews with the Tobins or just the grumblings from reporters. It seems like they are going to take Chase 5th. Do I think that's a bad pick? No. Do I think that's the wrong pick? Yes. Because we saw what happened to Joe Burrow. Bengals fans for 2 years have been offensive line. It's a mess. We get void. Take the guy that years old that has 6'6", 330 or the 6'5", 330-pound frame. The guy won all the awards as a sophomore, never been done before. A guy that in 5 probably going to be the best offensive tackle. Why not just take that guy? Bookend him with Jonah Williams and give Joe a chance back there. Jamar Chase isn't helping you out in the run game, but Penei Sewell can, and that helps elevate your signing. So to me, the logical pick is going to be Penei Sewell. I think they'll take Jamar Chase though.
And especially if AJ Green leaving, I guess there's a need for more weapons around Burrow. But even so, I think you're right. Cause I mean, it's been a while since I've watched a lot of Bengals football for obvious reasons, but a lot of that offensive line protecting the quarterback has been something that's hurt them since I would say Andrew Whitworth left and other parts have left. Like
absolutely,
the quarterbacks are just getting killed. Dalton's getting hurt.
I mean, Joe Burrow, Joe Burrow suffered what is considered like the hat trick of knee injuries plus the knee dislocation. He had ACL, MCL, PCL, knee dislocation. Like that's the level of like the Teddy Bridgewater injury. Like that's the level of Cecil Shorts, whose career ended because of it. That's how bad that knee injury was. And it's like fans were just like, he'll be fine. We need Jamar Chase. They're actually so scared that Burrow is going to be mad if they don't take Jamar Chase. I'm going to tell you something, Bengals fans. Joe Burrow will be just fine with whoever they take at that 5th overall pick. You don't have to freak out and think he's going to be mad because I didn't get him as buddy. Jamar Chase did an interview where he was doing this presser after his pro day where they asked him about playing with Joe, and he was like, yeah, I've talked to the Bengals once, maybe another time. I'm not sure. This is paraphrasing. And he was like, yeah, it'd be cool to play with Joe. Obviously, we have some chemistry, but yeah, that would be fine. It wasn't like, oh, man, me and Joe's friends were thick as thieves. We would, like if we get back together in the NFL, we'll be Montana and Rice. He didn't say any of that. Like sometimes these guys just work together, and then they go their separate ways after they get off the field. But Bengals fans have this bromance between those two. That's the frustrating part on why all of the fans, quote unquote, want Jamar Chase. I'm with you, man. Like you see what happens when you have bad offensive lines, players gets hurt. You get your Robert Griffins, your David Carrs, your other careers that have been just soiled by being sacked all the time. I think Penei Sewell is the no-brainer pick to me. Yeah. I just can't understand passing at the end. And the whole point to what you said, people think, oh, you could get offensive line talent in round 2. But you can also get receiver talent round 2 because this receiver is stacked. Be an Elijah Moore available. There will be a Seth Williams out available. There will be an Amon St. Brown, USC, available there. Hell, maybe you even get lucky and Terrence Marshall drops there. There is other receiver, just like where you found T. Higgins at the top of the second round last year. There's other second receiver talent. It doesn't have to be the case when you have the chance to draft Penei Sewell.
I think Cincinnati has this loving fantasy of we need our QB wide receiver connection. We need Palmer and Johnson, Dalton, Green. We need Burrow and Chase. But it's like, but let them get hurt at least. Palmer and Dalton and Burrow, just let them all get hurt.
And you got Burrow and Higgins. You can have Seth Williams out there playing an X and having Tyler Boyd in the slot, or you can have Tyler Boyd out there and Elijah Moore creating chaos. Or there are plenty of wide receivers in this draft class. Oh, there are plenty of wide receivers in this draft class just out of the SEC. Like it's just there are options. It's okay. There are not. Receivers, unfortunately, and that's the reason why I think you might see receivers drop in this draft, because I never expected Jerry Jeudy and CeeDee Lamb to go 15 and 17 last year. The only time receivers actually went higher than I thought was in 2017 when Corey Davis, Mike Williams, and Cincinnati's own John Ross all went in the top 10. But receivers, you could get those. Offensive linemen, maybe interior guys, but you cannot get offensive tackles that easy without paying a premium for them. And now there are examples, of course, but not guys like Sewell, not often.
Right. Absolutely. Well, it's going to be interesting to see with Cincinnati taking the first round pick. We got a few guys you might be looking at in Chase and Sewell, and you talked about Waddell and a few others as first round picks. But as UK fans, there's a couple guys that are talked about as some high picks as well. And I want to think this is a good little transition then for us to start talking about some of the UK players. As you mentioned, we both live in Lexington. We cover UK sports. And there's a couple guys in this draft that are being talked about for high picks. Jam Davis, Kelvin Joseph, to name a few. Farther down the draft, maybe Landon Young and Drake Jackson. But I wanted to get your thoughts on some of these UK players as well that are coming in here.
So I want to give a shout out to Coach Steve Ortmeyer, who passed away this year due to complications with cancer. I was the host of the UK Game Day pre-game show with Coach Ortmeyer for the first time this year. And he kept coming back to me with one name when I was like, I love Josh Paschal. I love Yusuf Corker. I love Darian Kennard. Like, I love these guys. He was like, Jamin Davis is going to be the best player on our defense. And I was like, such a huge job. I think Josh Paschal guy's a future first round, in my opinion. But Jamin Davis, I just wasn't completely sold on. And that was, it out the door. He's always been he was always so of me and so helpful. Like when I did my 2018 NFL, called me after the first segment, was really good. And I was like, this is a guy that's won Super Bowls, that's been an NFL coach, NFL front office, like just all of this, that said, a good job doing a mock draft. Like that meant the world to me. But to pay it back to him on Jamin, not me, Coach Ortmeyer was up on Jamin Davis way before I was. And even when the draft declared, I said, Jamin Davis is probably going to like slide into that 4th to 6th guy that's going to be able like really be a cleanup tack as an inside linebacker, a physical guy. And then of course he comes and has that pro day and people see the eye-popping numbers, the 4.38, the ripped, chiseled, Herculean frame. They turn on the tape and they see his sideline to sideline. Think that he can even be a drop back coverer, which I'm not 100% sure on. But Davis is a guy that a lot of people think is that's going to sneak into the first round, and some people have him in the middle of the first round. I think that Jamin Davis is going to be in order for a long time. I think he's going next to Luke Kuechly or Patrick Willis or Bobby Wagner. No, probably not. I think that's fair because those guys are Hall of Famers. I think that Jamin Davis could be easily one of those linebackers that can stay and play for 10 plus years, like your, David Harris as your London Fletch. You're trying to think of more contempt, just sit in the middle, just do work. I think that's going to be his career. And I think whatever NFL team picks him is going to be very, very satisfied and is going to get per dollar for their pick of Jamin Davis. Kelvin Joseph is a guy that I have a very just like in the terms of UK fandom, and as someone that was covering the team here, Kelvin Joseph, I'll admit, was not my favorite player. The idea of having the defensive back transfer come in, I read some of the bio, the stuff they had on. I kind of had an inference that maybe he was immature, which is nothing wrong with that when it comes to your interest or whatever they may be. But then, he gets on the field against Auburn. Obviously, Seth Williams ate him up and wanted to show it to him. And I was like, man, I don't really remember Seth Williams being that type of guy. And then in the Ole Miss game, he has that meltdown and he blows the pass interference in the back of the end zone that won Ole Miss that football game, the 41-42 overtime contest. His attitude got in the way of his teammates not his teammates but the team on the field. Everything seemed to get better though. The Tennessee happened and Kentucky had that run where Kelvin Joseph, you didn't hear a peep out and they never threw at him. He was playing the best football career during that stretch. And then against he blew his mind again when they had that, did Kyle Trask throw an interception or something? And he shoved Kyle Trask after a play or there was a situation in which he got another personal foul and then he opts out of the Carolina game to get ready for the draft, even though it was the last regular season for the Cats. It was very odd. Joseph's talented. Obviously his teammates liked him from their social media posts. So if his teammates didn't have a problem with him, I guess I didn't have don't have an overall problem with him. He's talented. There's first round buzz. I think it would be a mistake to take him in the first, second round corner. He could be a guy that has one really good season. And if he loves the game, maybe he'll have more than that, but I could definitely see his star kind of burning bright and quickly if that happens. Drake Jackson, I think, is going to be the next player picked for Kentucky. I could see him going in the mid rounds, 4th, 5th round, around that area. categorically small for the center. I looked up centers that have been drafted in the last 4 to 5 years, and there was only one center that even came close to the measurables. I think it was about 5 pounds off, but the guy was 2 inches taller. The only center really in the league that has the size Jackson has that's successful is Jason Kelce, Eagles, and he just happens to be a multiple-time All-Pro. Like, he's so good that his size didn't matter. I think if Drake gets in a system in which he can move, whether it be pools or zone schemes where he doesn't have to go head-to-head against a 340-pound nose tackle, I think he can find a starting spot in the league. And I think that coaches and GMs like Drake Jackson. I do think he will be drafted. And if he goes to a zone scheme that really plays to his strengths, he could probably have a decent career for himself. Landon Young, I would expect to be a late round pick, either 7th round or undrafted. He obviously had numbers at his pro day, numbers that far exceeded anything I would have expected for Landon. Obviously, he was a former 5-star prospect out of Lafayette High School. He is a player that I thought got better as he aged. You didn't really get to see him in pass protection over the last couple of years just due to Lynn Bowden becoming the quarterback and Terry Wilson not being the greatest passer, really having to create the offense around the run. But he was obviously very instrumental in that big blue wall. I just don't think I think he's a swing tackle, play left or right. You really have to believe in his athleticism to spend the draft pick and then the roster spot for him. It'll be interesting to see if a team really commits to Landon and really thinks that he is a future NFL starter, because I think that's the only way he's going to get rostered is if a team really believes that he has starting potential as well as being a swing tackle. And then Brandon Eccles has a shot at getting drafted. Quentin Bohanna has a shot at being a late round pick as primarily Max Duffy is a guy that the run and rugby style punting is not in vogue in the NFL at the moment. But obviously there are a lot of Aussies in the NFL punting. 2020 was not as good as 2019, but his 2019 was about as an elite a season that you can ever have out of a punter. He had one bad kick. It was against Georgia in the rain. That was the only bad punt he had the entire year. So potential Max Duffy could get drafted.
We'll see what happens with our good old Kentucky Wildcats. We got to root for them hard after all. And yeah, I know earlier you also mentioned one of your sleeper picks that you mentioned was Mills out of Stanford. But also with these rookies, is there anyone else that you see as potential sleepers that no one's talking about? You're like, this is a guy people got to pay more attention to.
So I'm going to give you now Davis Mills wasn't mine. I just want to be clear. Davis Mills is a guy that was brought to my attention that I looked at and was, okay, I can see why people like him. There are a couple of guys later in the draft that I'll get to, and one that I think people find interesting. But let me do 2 guys, maybe even 3 at the top of the draft that I think higher than what's being rumored. So let's start at the first round, and then I'll give you a couple of sleeps. Jalen Najee Harris, I have 9 and 10 on my board. I think they are studs, both of them. People have like guys like Kwity Paye, Patrick Surtain, guys like Christian Barmore going ahead of a guy like Jalen Phillips. I think Jalen Phillips is unequivocally the best defensive player in this draft class. He is not only a premier pass rusher, he's physical. He can play the run the arc, which is where you just run and you dip your shoulder and you kind of collapse in on the quarterback, try to swat the pass away. Von Miller obviously is like the king of the arc. He has every single thing that you want out of a star defensive end. It's just he had injury concerns that actually caused him to medical from when he was at UCLA, transferred to Miami, decided he wanted to, and he had an unbelievable season. He is the best defense player in my opinion. Caleb Farley's not too far behind. Farley is a very good cornerback. But Jalen Phillips is a guy that I've seen as the 5th, 7th defensive player off the board in round 1. He, in no doubt in my mind, is the number 1 defensive player in the draft. And then Najee Harris that a lot of people don't have in the first round because we don't like running backs anymore. So the chic thing is to keep running backs off or drop them all the way down in your draft. Najee Harris is the best running back in this class. Najee Harris is an elite tier running back. He's not the athlete Saquon Barkley was. He was like a special type of athlete, but I do think Najee's a better running back than Saquon Barkley is. I think his running back skills are very reminiscent of Ezekiel Elliott's. I think he has a 6'2", 230 frame. He has lateral jump cut. He's strong on contact. He's fast. The guy reminds me stylistically of LaDainian Tomlinson, the way he runs and the way he played the game of football. Like that guy just copied what LaDainian Tomlinson did and put it into a 6'2", 230. Do I think he is as good as Tomlinson? We will see, because he is so big. Maybe that lacks kind of that home run speed that Tomlinson could have at sometimes. He is I think he should be as high as consideration at 9 to Denver, and I think he would be an absolute perfect fit in Arizona, being for Kyler Murray, because Kyler Murray runs so much. He had over 100 rushes last year. Imagine having Najee Harris as your lead back, like blocking for you. He is essentially a fullback and a back's like speed and everything. He would be perfect in Arizona. They just lost Kenyon Drake. That's where I want to see him go. But Najee Harris is on that Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott level of running back, and people just aren't talking about him like. I also like Elijah Vera Tucker a lot, but he's a guy that a lot of people talk about. Sethams is a wide receiver that I have that people do, at least in terms of mock drafts. But guys that I wanted to mention that I have as quote-unquote sleepers, a lot of people don't think the tight end class is very good after Kyle Pitts, even though I have Pitts as a wide receiver, not a tight end. But Brevin Jordan of Miami, he was right up there with Kyle Pitts 2 years ago as the guys out of Florida that could be first round picks. And it seems like everybody's forgotten about him. But every time I turn on Miami tape and see Brevin Jordan, they're putting him in the backfield. They're putting him on the line. They're putting him in the slot. And he's running routes. He's running options. He's running screens. Like, obviously they trust him as a super athletic move piece tight end option. He's going to be more of a receiver than a blocker, but as a guy that I think has potential to be a top 10-ish tight end someday, I think Jordan has all the physical capabilities to be a pass catcher. Anthony Schwartz is a guy that probably won't go in the top 2 rounds, which, speed is the name of the NFL in terms of value and what people pay for and what people pay draft picks for. Maybe he will sneak into the second. But Anthony Schwartz is a kid that ran like a 4.26. He is he was the best player on offense in the SEC, which is, that's all you have to say. Like even Jalen Waddle. Now, when Jalen Waddle had the ball in his hands, he was the fastest, but we're talking about just that sprinter-esque. Anthony Schwartz is a track and field guy. He's someone that can land in as he's a guy that plays that you're going to see in your highlight Sports Center. And a Florida wide receiver, Trevon Grimes, is a guy that I like as a jump ball specialist. He went to Ohio State. He obviously has talent. I think that if a team drafts him to be type of receiver, I think he still struggles developing his routes when he's not in the red zone, but he could easily become one of the top jump ball artists in the league in terms of just throw it up in the back of the end zone and let him come down with it. And a fun note, Elijah Griffin is going to be a drafted cornerback out of USC, the University of Southern California football player, happens to be rapper Warren G's son, which I found out during this process. To regulate, Elijah Griffin's going to regulate onto one of your favorite ball teams.
There's some fun trivia.
Don't laugh at that.
Oh, okay. Wow. I'm trying to segue this right here. Sounds like there is a lot of talent in this draft, but how would you compare this draft class to last year's? I know we talked a little bit how you said you're more high on Joe Burrow versus Trevor Lawrence, but overall,
don't mince my words. I will say that they are probably equal with each other, in which there's like Andrew Luck and then like Burrow Lawrence. I think they're certain qualities of Trevor Lawrence that were better than Burrow's. And I think as a prospect, I think there's a world where Trevor Lawrence is a better NFL player than Joe Burrow. I just mentioned that I think Joe Burrow was a better passer coming out, but that doesn't mean I just don't want you to mince my words.
No,
Dan
no,
Pauly.
no, I know. I understand. I didn't say, but yeah, overall with this class compared to this one or previous ones, where do you feel like this class is going to be?
I think that's a good question because last year, if you look at it, you had your top three quarterbacks in Burrow, Tua, Herbert, which is kind of like the, Lawrence, Fields, Wilson. And then Jordan Love's a lot like the Trey Lance type of player in this class at the quarterback position. So I think that the quarterbacks for sure are similar. You could even compare like Okuda to Farley, and you can make the offensive tackle classes, how they're similar, in which there's like a big four. But I say that this class reminds me a lot of 2018. The 2018 NFL draft class was headlined by its quarterback. You had Baker, Allen, Rosen, and Lamar Jackson. Just like in this class, you're going to have your Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Lance, Mac Jones. And in that same vein, I thought that draft class was fairly weak defensively, to where my top players in that draft, like Minkah Fitzpatrick and Tremaine Edmonds, two guys that went in the teens, just like I think guys like Jalen Phillips and Caleb Farley could drop in to the teams as the best defenders. Whereas that class, now they had Bradley Chubb and Denzel Ward. I like Denzel Ward. Denzel Ward's become one of the best cover corners in the NFL. He is one of the very best corners in the NFL. And if you had to start a team with a cornerback, you might not choose anybody else but Denzel Ward. But I wasn't like big on Bradley Chubb. But they have some similarities there in the terms of quarterback heavy class with, in what my mind is a potentially weak of class. The difference is that 2018 didn't really have a lot of talent. Now Barkley did go second, kind of like Kyle Pitts being that, if it wasn't a quarterback, this guy's the best generational type of prospect. That's what Kyle Pitts is. But that's kind of see in the terms of a next comparison, it reminds me a lot of the 18 feel. I do think that this draft is a very, very weak second half of the first round. From the guys that I've watched, I have about 15 guys that I'm very confident in the first round that I would absolutely take and not have much of a problem with it. And it might even 12 guys that I'm absolutely sure of. I think the second half of the first round of this year, you can get some good players, but it's your second round level of prospects are starting pretty early in this draft class, when usually you want, these first rounders to be guys that are, sure things. So that's probably where the weakness in this draft is. And I think the plus of this draft is that if you have a top 10, even top 12 pick, in my mind, you're gonna get a surefire 10-year, no doubt about it type of player.
Well, the draft is going to be coming up here soon, and we're excited to see where things are going to go with Trevor Lawrence and all these guys here. And Angela, I want to say thank you so much for coming on to the show again for your fifth episode here.
Is it my fifth appearance?
This is your fifth, man. We've talked about everything under the sun, from wrestling to football, man.
That's true. And I wanted to say, it's funny you said everything under the sun. I always say on my even on my promo on ESPN Radio Lex, I say under the sports sun, because I really like that. And I've tried to coin that saying. The last thing I want to say, and thank this opportunity to talk about all my opinions on these players. But the one thing, because you actually let me say everything I would say, and I really appreciate that. But the thing I didn't get to reiterate strong enough is that I think Kyle Pitts is the best non-quarterback prospect I've seen since Joey Bosa in 2016. So it's been 5 years since I've seen a prospect that wasn't a quarterback as good as Kyle Pitts. He is, and I mean, when you're talking about special, from his size being unguardable, his athleticism being unparalleled at his size, I think he is. I think he had to be the next coming of. Alvin Johnson was probably a little more fluid of an athlete, and that'll help because Johnson was a little lighter and a little faster. But in the terms of a guy that, I watched Kyle Pitts last. in the SEC championship game going through that end of that year. I thought that he could play in a Super Bowl. He could be in the Super Bowl that last year and be one of the best offensive players on the field, one of the best players on the field, period. That's how good I think he is a special level talent. He is generational for how good he is as a player. He doesn't have the raw speed of a Julio Jones. He doesn't have the natural kind of, I think he's very fluid for his size. He's not like AJ Green, who's just like a 5'10" receiver in a 6'4" receiver's body. But when you combine his best traits, he really does mirror Calvin Johnson in a lot of ways. And I think he is physically going to dominate every single matchup on his field like we haven't seen since Calvin.
All right, man. High on Calvin Pitts. We'll have to see how high he goes in the draft here. Well, Angelo, as we're recording, you got some special episodes of your show coming up. So you want to tell us a little bit what's coming down the pipeline for the Angelo show?
Absolutely. So on Sunday, April 25th, that I will have an NFL draft preview show just for people to call in and talk to me that morning. I'm just going to go more of a conversational style of my opinions about a lot what I've laid out on Dan Pauly's show right now, but you can either hear that live from 10 to 11 a.m. on Sunday morning, or you can hear it on podcast form on WLXG.com. Just click on the on air tab. You go to on air, you'll find the Angelo Carriero show. Click on that, and then my most recent episode with the NFL draft preview show on there. Then April 29th, on the day of the NFL draft from 6 to 7, I will be doing a mock draft show from 6 to 7, where it's more condensed version of my opinions, where players are projected to go, and what could be expected from your favorite NFL team in round 1 NFL draft. So tune in to that on April 29th from 6 to 7 p.m. Thursday on ESPN Sports Radio 1300, 92.5 FM, and streaming live all around the world at WLXG.com. So there's my plug for that. I'll be on the drive all of next week too, from 26th to the 30th, except for Wednesday. So I'll be on that show if you want to tune in, and I'll be doing some producing, a little bit of SEO, and obviously they're going to want to talk about the draft all week, and they know that as you do, how big I am into it. So it's gonna be a fun time next week. It's my favorite holiday of the year, the NFL draft.
All right, Angelo, pleasure having you on. Pleasure talking sports with you. This man won our WrestleMania prediction, so I owe him a beer as well. So next when we get together, I'll give them that. And until next time, Angelo, we're hoping to have you on again.
I will, whenever you want me on, I will come on. It's always good to be in your corner here on the FITC podcast.
All right, till next time, brother.